You know, I'm asked quite often about what is a router and how to use it. I'm Eddie Field with Field Guide to DIY. In this episode, we're going to go over the basics of the router. Let's dive in. Now, what basically a router is a machine that spins a blade at a high revolution. A router can do any number of things depending on the size and shape or effect that you're wanting to have on your piece. Now, this old Worksmith router set has an indicator of each of the types of shapes that you'll get out of each bit. That makes the selection a lot easier. So what you need to know, first of all, is what size shank is on your bit. That will determine which router you use. This bit will obviously not fit into this router chuck. So that chuck is where the bit's going to go in. And there are two nuts. Actually, that chuck tightens against that outer nut. And with this Rockwell, you loosen it by going to the right. And then when that chuck is loosened, then you can insert a bit in there. And I like to bottom it out. Push it all the way down so the shaft is at the bottom of the chuck. Some routers will have a spring-loaded lever. The spring-loaded lever will go into that chuck, and that'll keep it from turning. But this model has 2 wrenches. So now that the bit is in there, we can tighten towards the left. And then you can actually use the housing to hold that wrench as I tighten this one towards it. Or you can squeeze them, like so. That chuck is good and tight. Now, next step, now that the bit's in there, I want to look across the plane and see how much bit I want to show. So next, I have to loosen the base. And you'll see this Rockwell has a bit of a depth gauge on it. And as I turn it, you get more or less of that bit showing. That will put a bit of a decorative scallop edge. That will actually put a corner in your cut. So before I do any routering, I like to have a piece of scrap, ideally the same kind, like a cutoff of the project that I'm working on, and test my routing on that piece of scrap wood. That's what we're going to do right now. And this will just be a round over. I just want a round over, so I'll put it right about there. And lastly, I've got one other router to show you. This is called a plunge router. It's a little more expensive, but it's got a neat trick. It's spring-loaded. So what you can do is you can set your depth, set your stop, and you're going to go down exactly that far. Or you can lock it in place. It's a plunge router that we'll be covering in a later episode, all by itself. So that's your introduction to the router. Not the first tool for a woodworker, but if you're going to continue on in woodworking, definitely something to look into. I'm Eddie Field with Field Guide to DIY. For another important woodworking tip, click the image on your screen now.